Welcome everybody to another Beyond Bitcoin Hangout. Today is Friday, March 25th, 2016. We're joined today by Bytemaster of CNX, aka Cryptonomics,
Actually,
who is one of the...
I'm not representing
go ahead.
Cryptonomics in these mobile sessions. Remember that?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that. Just one. Dang, you got my flow, Bytemaster. Okay,
Sorry,
so I'm just gonna pretend.
I just wanted to kill that so that we could make sure that the record's straight.
Yeah, we're joined by Bytemaster of Cryptonomics, who is working on the Bitshares blockchain. Everything that he says during these hangouts however, is his opinion. It's not a legally binding obligation or anything that you should set in stone because it could change at any given moment. Everybody here knows how cryptocurrency is moving faster and faster, and it seems like things are always going to change. So we're walking this road together, everyone. And what this hangout is for is to introduce community members to developers who are working on various projects. Bitshares is where we started, and we love the Bitshares exchange and the technology and the community. And my gosh, there's a lot to love about Bitshares. And how we're going to start this format would be with Bytemaster talking about any updates on what he's doing. And then we're going to move into community questions. We have been joined today by Jasper from Spells of Genesis, who would like to discuss a little bit of our time with the community about the new Bitshares card that they are wanting to create and put into the Spells of Genesis game. So if we could find a way of carving some time out for him after we're done with the formal hangout, please stick around and we can chat about it. And with that, Bytemaster, I've got nothing else, at least for the introduction. Would you like to get onto your legally non-binding or non-contractual update?
Sure. I think thanks for the introduction there, Fuzzy. You probably went overkill in emphasizing some of that stuff, but I also appreciate your efforts. Bitshares is rapidly evolving. It's finding its niche in the marketplace. Each and every week, our team is working with community members such as ABIT and SVK to improve the user experience of Bitshares, to identify and fix bugs. We have been making steady progress on the stealth UI, so please check out the alternative wallet. It's not yet been deployed to OpenLedger, but there is a place where you can test it on the live Bitshares network. And that includes backups on the server. So that stuff is coming along. There are still issues, as always. We found 2 new blockchain bugs, or ABIT introduced them. There's a recursive, the nested account structure will fail to authenticate in certain circumstances. So the fix is a one-line change, but unfortunately it will require a hard fork to implement. So that's going to come out in the next hard fork. The other is a unfortunate event. We fixed the bug. in the last hard fork. We merged it, we tested it, and there was some shenanigans with Git versions and merging, and the fix actually didn't make it into the release like we had thought. Git canceled it out. And unfortunately, it canceled it out after we tested it all. So all of our testing was for naught because of a last second screw up with Git. We are putting in extra controls in place to make sure this doesn't happen again. But long story short, we will need to have another hard fork to incorporate a couple of the fixes that were supposed to be in the one from last week. So I apologize. We're doing our best to prevent these things from happening, but there's always that last steps in the release process that can you think you've tested everything every which way, and Murphy's Law strikes and something doesn't happen. So those two issues will be resolved in a single hard fork, and Ben's working on that. Otherwise, it seems like we need to get more people out voting. So that, because some of the workers aren't getting funded. So if you're not voting, you need to carefully consider the worker proposals and make sure that key players such as SVK, Xerox, and Abit continue to get funding, as well as the maintenance developer at Block Trades. These are the people that are allowing Bitshares to be maintained and to continue funding the patches and the releases that go forward. So please consider that. As you know, this past week, the hard fork went through that disabled negative voting, and that caused some shuffling of who got funded. So please, if you haven't voted recently, look into it. Other than that, I'm ready for community questions.
Here, let's go ahead. I'm going to... Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Crypto.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a real quick question about the voting process. Can you just real briefly explain, like, I don't know, either the math or the sort of game theory, I guess you would call it, behind there seems to be a lot of confusion as to whether or not disabling negative voting will be quote unquote easier or more difficult to vote workers in, or whether it will require more or less sort of vigilance on the part of the voters. Is there something that you could say as far as the differences between the two voting methods? What's the nuance between the two that makes one better than the other?
Sure. With negative voting, someone can escape from all their negative votes by creating a new worker and then get positive votes, which forces everyone that was voting against it to remain vigilant. So under the new approach, it requires less effort of the voters. You don't have to remain vigilant. You approve what you want to approve, and no one can get more approval just by launching a new worker and escaping any negative votes they got in the past. So this is something that we learned a long time ago and then forgot about when we implemented it in Graphene. We restored it So it should be more secure. Now, the thing to remember is if you're voting for the refund worker and you're voting for other workers, you're more or less canceling your vote out. You should try to vote so that the sum of everyone you're voting for equals the daily budget, which means if you're voting to fund the maintenance developer and SVK and CryptoFresh, then you should figure out what the daily difference is and vote for only as many refund workers as necessary. Otherwise, your vote for the refund worker is washing out your vote. So it raises the bar on anyone getting in, but you're also not actively specifying that you prefer paying those guys versus the refund worker. So be aware of some of that. So the idea is you should go to the workers tab and you should approve a set of workers that adds up to the daily budget. And if you don't see enough workers to add up to the daily budget, add a few refund workers until you get to that threshold. And if everyone does that, everyone is more or less voting directly on what they want the budget to be. And the blockchain will sort by total approval and pay out each day accordingly.
I don't see Xerox here, but I wanted to give him a shout out and a thanks for releasing the paper wallet generator. And also, I think he had an appearance on the Daily Decrypt that was nice.
Oh, did he?
I think it was Xerox. I'm not sure.
I know that Data Security Node was on there.
Yeah, I saw that one too, and that was good also. But yeah, I'm very psyched about the paper wallet generator. It's really cool to be able to create a piece of paper with a little bit of gold, a little bit of US dollars, a little bit of Bitshares, and some schmitz and giggles and fist bumps.
Xerox was on this week with Daily Decrypt.
Oh, that is awesome. Are there any other questions regarding what we've been talking about with Bytemaster? Real quick.
I asked a question earlier about Bytemaster mentioned a couple of bugs. Is one of those bugs related to the stealth fee distribution that Once Upon a Time was looking for?
Yes, it is. And that's why I feel very, very bad about it.
Sorry to bring it up again.
So it's just one of these things, though. I mean, this stuff does happen. It's moving forward. Right?
Yes. Our guys are moving forward on it. We just feel bad that, it's one thing to fix the bug release, but we know that it makes all the witnesses and exchanges upgrade. And from that perspective, it's extremely costly. The mistake was extremely costly. So I'm really hoping we can do a better job at preventing this type of thing in the future. Now, this is an example of why I'd like to see the Bitshares blockchain move toward a stable set of core features, position itself as a particular niche in the market rather than continuing to expand to every business area. I know that's kind of contrary to the idea of the one blockchain to rule them all. Let's do everything. But I think what we're learning is every feature brings complexity, and any one feature can disrupt other features. And if we can get to a stable state, then the people can start to depend upon the blockchain to do something and to do that one thing very well. And if it's not that one thing, they can go elsewhere. And this is where the side chains and everything we talked about last week comes into play. So I'm really excited to see people have reached out to me to build the side chains. I think there's a lot of effort in that direction. So if Bitshares can become the open exchange where anyone can list their assets and they get exchange-like features, that would be the best of everything.
Bytemaster, would you care to comment about the approach to side chains and the effort that Lisk is mounting right now in their success in the marketplace?
I don't know too much about Lisk.
Well, it's based on not old graphene. It's based on the old model, the 1.0 era of Bitshares. It's a DPoS chain, and they're building upon it. And it's basically in a nutshell, in a paraphrase, it is Bitshares 1.0 ported to Node.js rather than from C++. And that's a very broad way of looking at it, but it's Node.js based for the server side, with everything that we're doing on the front end in graphene, very similar to what they're doing now for their front end.
Sounds like an interesting project. JavaScript and Node.js has really impressed me. And they'll probably be able to get pretty decent performance, but nothing quite like what we're doing. But one thing about doing everything in JavaScript is they've got a built-in virtual machine. So combine that with DPoS, and you can release hard forks as JavaScript patches, and no one has to upgrade. So that's probably the best thing about that, if that's what they're doing. I'm just speculating at this point.
No, that's correct.
Sounds like a very interesting project.
Thank you for your comments.
Data said, if you are interested in side chains for discussions like this, Tom, then join forum.blockchainbunker.com and bring others from Lisk to join in too. Regarding Cass, this is something that I would like to really quick speak on. He had some personal things. I don't want to get into it too deep, but suffice it to say, it was like really something that you would probably not expect anybody to really work a whole lot after something like what happened. And he kind of stepped away for a little bit, but he's planning on coming back at some point in time, or at least he was, until his worker at one point got voted out. But you're saying it's now back in?
Cass is a very busy man. Seems like everyone's hiring him for every other crypto project out there.
Yep, and he started here. Oh, Lisk Crypto fan, Tess, thanks, Tess. I'm surprised we haven't seen more Bitshares guys in the Lisk thread on BTT. There's a lot of confusion from the community on DPost. We're more than welcome. You guys are more than welcome to join us in discussions anytime too.
Last week,
Their marketing success right now is pretty impressive.
What were you going to say, Brindle? Sorry.
yeah, last week Bytemaster hinted at eventually the desirability for what he's talking about, simplifying Bitshares, maybe getting rid of the lifetime membership, which I think is, maybe way early. The referral program really, it's just too early. It's not consumer friendly enough yet. I was wondering if he would care to speculate on some of the other things that could be done with lifetime membership, like could it be required for witnesses and proxies, and maybe some in committee membership. Could there be some other perks with lifetime membership, just to speculate in the other direction of expanding it rather than getting rid of it?
Lifetime membership can be converted into an HOV lane of rate limited transactions. So you have lifetime members, they've got a fixed percent of the available bandwidth, and everyone else is sharing the rest, which should give them preferential treatment in blocks compared to everyone else. So I guess that's a way of rewarding lifetime members. It's just like the HOV lane.
It's already required to have lifetime membership to become a witness.
Thanks,
And a
Tom.
worker.
Did you say something, Brindle?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for those answers.
Okay. Sorry, Bytemaster. I'm going to use this opportunity real quick to let everybody know that we are signing the guest book. So I am going to post that here right now. And I would ask you to consider signing it and potentially giving us your email address if you'd like us to contact you for any special hangouts that we're going to be having in the future. And with that said, let's get back to the community questions. Is there anything on anybody's mind, or are there any projects that you feel that we need to be aware of in our ecosystem currently?
I'll throw an idea out there.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah, I have an idea from left field. When I look at Kickstarter and Indiegogo projects for movies, they raise a whole different level than maybe for crypto projects. I think what we're doing is a movie, and I know Crypto Fresh did the little documentary, but taking on this whole the next couple years as it unfolds. If we did a Kickstarter, somebody did a Kickstarter to make that a movie, that could fund a whole lot of stuff.
That's actually a really cool idea.
Thank you.
It is interesting. I wonder what kind of traction we would get in mainstream for something like that. Because if you look at it from the mainstream perspective, crypto is such a small activity going on. It's really, we have a distorted view of how popular it is because we're in it. But if you look at it from the average person on the street, I bet they have just a barely aware level of understanding of what Bitcoin is at all.
Well, with the Kickstarter, people could get tokens and they could share in the profits of the movies. So even if it is still a niche market, I was looking up the top 10 crowdfunded movies, and a few of them, like Super Troopers 2, have raised $5 million. Now, I know that's obviously a mainstream, but there have been some indie films and niche market movies that have still raised a couple $100,000.
You might be very interested in looking into dollars and cents then, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
Do we have somebody
real
right
quick.
now who has a lot of experience in the Kickstarter to set up one and to rise basically the marketing for a successful Kickstarter? Is there anybody within the community who knows how to do that?
Well, it looks like Solomon is doing a good job.
I was just going to say the same thing. He's well into that realm as well as crypto now. So I think that would be a good person to go to if you had questions or wanted to get some input on what he's learned about marketing in the Kickstarter realm as well as in the crypto space.
And he's here
I'll
now.
definitely reach out for you, Chris.
Well, I would just say, like, I'm very interested in a Kickstarter campaign as well. Maybe you already read it in the Telegram. We had just announced basically a new project from Bitshares Munich. We just launched basically the project Echo. And Echo is merging private chatting and digital money transfer together. We're gonna be built on the Bitshares platform. And right now we are basically talking to several investors in around Germany, and I'm also talking to several accelerator programs, so that we're gonna basically have a very cool app for Android and iOS, which is targeting basically just mainstream customers and businesses, because I think we have both software packages now already available. And yes, I think it could be also a Kickstarter could be maybe also a good way how to get the seed funding for us, and to bring Echo basically to the mainstream, to the market. And I'm gonna launch basically a small forum post within today to just share all the information with you. You can already go to the website, get an idea how the wallet and the chat app should look like. And yes, I'm open to any kind of feedback, suggestions, also marketing support. And this is an app which is especially not for the cryptocurrency area. So it's not for people who know what Bitcoins are. It is really for people who want to have stable cryptocurrencies and want to use it in a day-to-day base for paying, for remittance, for safe chatting. So this is, I think, a very interesting project. And so far, our feedback from investors is very positive.
Well, you guys are busting your butts on open POS and all that stuff, so you have a lot of trust in the community.
Yeah, it's great to see what's going on. There's a lot of activities going on. Data security node raised a good question that I think is important to be addressed here if we can. And that is there's a thread talking about a worker proposal that is basically dispersing from the dividend, basically dispersing from our liquidity pool, if you will, our refund thing. So I think that'd be worthy of discussing whether that's something that will get any traction, and whether or not we need to do anything about it, or whether it's even an attack.
Well, if they're following the rules, it's not necessarily an attack. I don't know, or haven't read the proposal of what they plan to do with the funds. But I think it's good that someone's taken an initiative to try to do something, and that's better than the alternative of no interest whatsoever.
Well, the way I read the thread was they didn't really have a goal of doing anything with the funds. It was more of just a way to to obtain a payback, a dividend from that pool. But maybe I misread it.
In other words, people voting to give themselves money
Yes.
by trusting those people.
That's how I read it.
Well, that's the same thing as voting to fund a refund worker, except it gives it to everyone. So in this case, what they're trying to do is, if everyone votes for it, it's the same as voting for the refund worker, except if one person abstains, then everyone else benefits at their expense. So the idea, I think this is a response to the removal of negative votes. There's a large contingent of people who are very much against any and all dilution. And that contingent is cutting off the funding for people who don't have any stake in Bitshares. If you work full-time to earn a living wage and you get paid in Bitshares, that's a job. You could be making the same money somewhere else. But all of a sudden, if that gets cut off, now you've got to get a job somewhere else. And that's just what happens. So the question Bitshares has to ask, and all the voters need to consider, is do you want to enable people like Xerox and SVK to continue doing their thing? Or would you rather them stop and keep what you've got? Those are the choices. I can tell you that the people Bitshares depends upon, from theoretical to Valentine and block trades and SVK, CAS, and the like, their combined stake in the system is relatively small. These people didn't have tons of money to buy in. They didn't have tons of hash power to mine in. And a large part of my stake has been spent making up for the fact that the blockchain's not paying these other people. So at some point, if we aren't careful, it could end up in a situation very similar to Bitcoin, where it has to be developed by people who have a outside motivation, other interests other than Bitshares interests for what they're doing. So keep in mind that Bitshares is very widely distributed, that even at the height of funding, we had a very small percentage of all the Bitshares, well under 10%. And that was at the height. Now, a lot of that money has been spent funding Bitshares, and now, that extra subsidy, which no one has seen, is money that people like myself have been putting in. Now, I haven't been taking worker proposals from the blockchain. And the little bit that BlockTrades has paid has been insignificant. It's a tiny fraction of what we've done for Bitshares. So the economic equation is very, very simple. People are going to build businesses that maximize the return on their investment. Someone who owns 1% of Bitshares, they need to have Bitshares go up $100 for every $1. For every $1 sorry, I'm stumbling with math in my head.
We believe in you.
I had that problem earlier.
Yes, you did.
If I own 1% of Bitshares and I invest $100 in Bitshares, Bitshares needs to go up 100 times just for me to make my money back. So is my investment. And that's a pretty substantial gain. Whereas that same money could be spent building a business that has other revenue streams that may or may not be on Bitshares. And that each individual actor is making these calculations. Do I join? What should they spend their time doing? So there's lots of initiatives out here, and they're great initiatives. The sidechains initiative, the various wallets, the cards, all these things you'll notice have something in common. There's another business model there funding them, and that's good. And Bitshares benefits indirectly. But some things it's really hard to have an alternative business model, and what that covers the cost of enhancements to the protocol, of bug fixes. So we should be very, very proactive in our voting to make sure that the people who are just regular guys, these are not wealthy people that are trying to get rich off of anyone. They're just trying to help the cause. Make sure they get paid, because that's the foundation that gives all the other businesses the benefit. Everyone benefits when that work gets done, and so everyone should pay for it, is the bottom line. And expecting one person to pay for it and everyone else to share the benefits is not a long-term stable plan.
Do you think the removal of the negative voting capability is going to make it more difficult or less difficult to counter this dividend, this latest worker proposal that's dipping into our creating dividends to pay a few people?
If you look at the proxies combined, the proxies have much more power than the single proxy. The single largest proxy with 120 million Bitshares is less than the sum of the next two proxies. One of them is Xerox and I think me. So by voting in coordination, those other, no one else is going to be able to get in as long as the top 2 or 3 proxies coordinate. Now, if the proxies don't actively update their votes, don't consciously choose to fund development, then they won't. Then a single large proxy could gain some traction. But I'm not particularly worried about it. I believe the top couple proxies will get together and vote, and the end result will be that the dividend proposal won't go anywhere. But it's important that if you're on this mumble session if you want to be a proxy that's actually going to proactively vote for these people, you come out and say it. And if the existing proxies aren't doing their job of updating their votes in a timely manner to make sure that critical infrastructure gets funded, change your vote.
Now, I hate to admit this, but I'm not gonna lie. I have Xerox set up as a proxy, but let's go ahead and, for anybody who's listening, what is the easiest way to vote for the proxies right now, or to vote for individual workers?
Go to your account page, go to voting, set proxy to Master or Xerox.
Oh, I thought it was under Explore. I kept looking for it there the other day, and I was like, where the heck is this? Okay, so whenever you go in, your account is the first tab. So as soon as you log in, you're pretty much ready to go. Just down, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. And then it has proxy, witnesses, committee members, and workers. I can go in here and approve or reject them on my own.
One last quick question, just to kind of wrap up this discussion about that particular refund or dividend worker, as they're calling it. The one scenario I still sort of see in my mind, and maybe this is just a worst case scenario, but there kind of seems to be some sort of maybe I'll call it a snowball effect that could happen if that worker ended up getting enough votes to be either voted in, or it looks like it's getting close to get voted in. Obviously, you have this sort of, I don't know, tragedy of the commons, maybe you could call it, somewhere in the neighborhood of that type of idea, where all of a sudden now, hey, this is going to be paid out no matter what. And if I don't vote for this, then I'm going to lose out on my opportunity to get this free money that's being, helicoptered in by this. So is that what would be this, now that negative voting is voted out? What would be the solution to that? What solution would we have to counter that? Maybe creating a larger refund worker. Would that be the idea? Create a refund worker for, say, well, no, that doesn't make sense because I don't know. I'm wondering.
That's a good question.
Well, right now there's only one person voting for fund to pay dividend, and that's Dax. And it's only got 2.8%. So I wouldn't consider giving this much more attention until some major proxy comes out voting for it. The top two proxies are voting identically, and they're voting to fund nothing. Then everyone else is more or less voting to fund the active workers right now. With the exception of BitCrab, who is not funding the blockchain maintenance developer or the percentage-based transfer fee solution. So it looks like the community is pretty divided between it. The refund workers are at 45.5%, and the most approved worker is at 50.4%. So there's less than 5% spread between the most approved worker and the refund workers. So it's very much an issue that's been dividing the community. It's currently biased slightly toward funding development.
So we've been at this for a couple years now, and as much discussion and as many times, Bytemaster, you have a lot of what seems to me to be very logical and I understand a lot of what you're saying about that. Of course, I come from a very sort of capitalist Western Hemisphere upbringing and mindset about people being able to get paid for the work that they do appropriately and all these other things. And I'm wondering if there isn't a divide that isn't going to be reconciled by some aha moment of 50%. It's kind of like all these other major divides we see in the world now, culturally, politically. You have people that are just on both ends, and nobody wants to give, and people have the opportunity to vote with their stake. That's how they're going to vote. So I'm wondering, and this is just totally random and out of left field. This seems to be a sort of an out of left field day, so I'm going to throw this out there. What?
Throw them, buddy.
Yeah, I see some other communities that seem to be able to get more traction because they have communities that aren't as divided as we are, communities that sort of everyone goes with the flow. And whether or not that could be good or bad, maybe, someone might say, oh, there's just a bunch of followers and a couple leaders and that, but the point is, like, generally, you want to get something done, what's the most efficient way to get something done? It's sort of more of a rigid, structured,
centralized.
Either, I mean, the extreme case, the extreme example of that is fascism. But you have, corporate, hierarchies and things like that. And generally speaking, if you have a point man or a number of point men or women, things get done. That's just the way that it ends up working. And so I'm wondering if there's I don't know. I don't know what the solution is here,
sure.
But
a
middle ground.
Let me provide some insights here. If you read How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World, they really talk about the group trap, trying to influence the group to do something versus taking direct action yourself. It's almost always better to take direct action as a means of change rather than campaigning for group action. Because even if you win today, someone else is going to campaign against you tomorrow and change it, right? Whereas if you take individual action to secure your freedom or your business or whatever, it's better off. So what's going to happen, and this is just my prediction, is that eventually one side or the other is going to vote with their feet. Because
So one half of Bitshares is going to say, screw it, we're going to start our own chain, and then we'll have two
Quite
communities
possible.
that are unified with each other.
it's just a simple equation of, do I stay here, in which case all my efforts are diluted by 50%, right? Because someone's working against me, or do I go somewhere else where there's more unity and I got the freedom to do what's necessary? Those are the questions that we as individuals must ask. And obviously everyone is better off with network effect. You divide in half, you don't just split the pie. The pie goes to a quarter. So what keeps everyone together is the fact that there's a significant loss if we all split.
Well, I also see sort of the reality that Bitshares can still grow the same way most other cryptocurrencies grow, right? Is with outside capital coming in and building on it. So, we're not totally beholden, it's this whether or not we can dilute and pay workers isn't going to necessarily make or break Bitshares in the long run, even if our community stays, right
Sure.
around that 46 to 54% divide or whatever. And the reality is other, Depos chains or other graphene chains, as they are built and different side chains and different projects, that there will be other models that will be able to showcase what can be done when sort of a community is more on the same page than we are about using dilution, for example, to pay workers or something like that. So I guess I'm just, sort of playing with ideas here. I don't know the solutions, but
This is why I think it's critical for Bitshares to get to a stable feature set. Once we get to a stable feature set and all these little bugs that we've talked about worked out, then we can cut off dilution. People can just build on the platform. As long as things keep shifting beneath people, we're still going to need funding to make that happen. So I guess your point is right on, that if we had a stable feature set, then there isn't the need to review releases with bug fixes and coordinate hard forks and so on and so forth. And that people like OpenLedger can fund wallets because it's part of a greater business plan. And that was the whole idea behind a lot of the changes we made, was to make it so that people could fund things without dilution. So I think we could probably get the community on the same page if we had a roadmap to end dilution.
Do you think, Bytemaster, given what you know about software development and your personal experience, that we'll be able to cut off dilution to pay for even just maintenance, or do you think we're going to always need something to sustain the network?
Hopefully, the maintenance needs can get down to a volunteer effort.
That surprises me to hear you say that.
Like Bitcoin, basically.
I didn't think that you were a proponent to have people use the altruism as a way of keeping the network going.
It's not, altruism is not what keeps the network going. What keeps the network going is all the businesses and projects that are built on top without dilution that keeps it going. The the issue is to minimize the amount of shared expenses and shared rewards. And to some extent, everyone in a neighborhood has financial incentive to clean up trash to keep the housing prices in the neighborhood up, right? So everyone's got financial incentive to do a little bit to help address major issues. Or if my business depends upon something that there's a bug in Bitshares, I'll fix it for my business because it's in the way of my business, and not necessarily because it's for Bitshares. But Bitshares still benefits. The challenge is when we try to keep adding features to Bitshares. That's when it gets challenging to continue to fund that with dilution. So I guess what I'm saying is that if we move toward a path of feature stability and reduced scope, like hyper-focus, and eliminate anything that's a distraction, we can dramatically reduce the cost necessary to maintain the network. And then we can let the businesses that find value in the network build up on Bitshares. And those businesses benefit by not having a moving target, which is good. And it might get us all in a little bit more unity here. Now, as long as Open Ledger is depending upon us to fix the wallet, as long as people feel like the wallet is not good enough, then but I think a lot of people, maybe you guys can give me some feedback on this, but is the wallet sufficient? If all work stopped on the wallet today, could it last a year or two, and keep the network going?
I guess that's kind of the focus of the last part of my question was, there will always be somebody that wants something else, that feels that there's a bug, that seems it's not something's not quite right, and that's the drive, that's the pressure that keeps things moving forward. And so if you stop that, is it realistic to expect that can stop? That's the basic question.
I don't think that necessarily we even need to remove the feature of being able to dilute. I think it just comes down to not needing to depend on it less, and so therefore it's not, we can still have this sort of, tightrope of division that, I mean, really, let's face it, like the only things that get in are the ones that are really, 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 desired by people or whatever, I mean, in some ways, it could end up being a good thing, and that's sort of a check on it. But of course, at this early stage, and I know Bytemaster, you've talked about this before, like, when you're a startup, you got to spend money. Like that's how it goes. And I think we have sort of suffered because of this unwillingness
100%
to put it out there and spend, especially because, I mean, this is just an experiment here still, guys, and this is just money we've conjured out of thin air based on an agreement we've all made with each other, so I think that I mean, that's all any money is, I suppose, but I mean, I think that
and the power of depots too, that's what the power of what we are doing here with proof of stake allows people to code this stuff in a certain way. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I'd like to put this all in perspective. Imagine someone came to Bitshares with an offer for to spend $1 million to work on Bitshares, and in exchange for $1 million, they wanted 20% stake. Should Bitshares take them up on that? That's giving them a lot more stake, but that's fresh capital that's going into investing and growing the infrastructure, versus someone who just takes $1 million and buys Bitshares on an exchange It might push the price up, but that $1 million is gone. It went to someone who exited the platform, right?
Wouldn't that pretty much give that person controlling interest in Bitshares as it is right now?
It would give them controlling interest as well. Yes.
Well, that's where I would object to it. But I mean, from a practical standpoint, in terms of investing and seeing the platform evolve, it sounds good. But from a standpoint of how it could actually cause it to be a dictatorship to whatever that person that had that 20% wanted to do, in that regard, it's no longer decentralized, and it would be bad.
Let me be clear, because things can easily be taken out of context. I'm not suggesting that this should happen or the Bitshares would ever vote to allow it to happen. My point is only that the developers who are doing the work contribute $1 million worth of labor each year, and they get less than 5%. So if we vote with 100% of our dilution for developers, that's the same thing as voting to sell shares, to raise capital, to continue growth. You cut it off, that's basically saying, all right, you got a company, it's got whatever assets and network effect it's got, but we're not going to raise any more funds. But it's just think about it from the perspective of raising capital. And do you want to raise capital or not? A focus on the price of Bitshares. Now, whether it's 5 million or 25 million, that both of those prices are meaningless compared to the potential price if the system's successful. It's a rounding error to future profits for those who are interested in long-term investment. Now, everyone gets up in arms if they see the price fall in the short term. All prices represent our preferences for immediate liquidity. Changes in the flow of money into and out of. If there's a high flow in, the price can go really high. And if there's high flow out, it can go really low. But those major price movements can be triggered by just a small percentage of the stake moving in or out. So it doesn't really represent a change in value. It's just change in value today. Anyway, this is all just.
It all seems like a sort of intellectual exercise to keep explaining sort of the same ideas and concepts, and I appreciate how often you've split the hairs sort of all of this into 50 different ways of explaining, and this is all very good, but I wanted to get back to we are at the situation we're at now with voting. So what you mentioned earlier about getting to a stable feature set, can we sort of talk about or just go over once again and emphasize, or maybe Bytemaster, you could give your idea, and anyone else who has their ideas of exactly what that looks like. I've heard everything from perhaps liquidity incentives to go along with the DEX, but what's our what's our goal? What do we want Bitshares to look like to sort of get to this stage where we can depend on we don't have to be frustrated about whether or not people are voting for worker proposals, because we'll be able to attract more outside capital and things like that.
So
This is actually a.
I think if all we did was merge all the things that have already been funded, so the free transactions or the rate limited transactions that ABIT wrote, percentage-based transfer fee, and the final stealth update, we will have a blockchain that is good enough. It's low fees. It has privacy. It's got scalable, flexible. All the fee structures are done. It's got all the features you need for an exchange, except for subsidizing liquidity rewards. Subsidizing liquidity rewards is something that can be done off-chain. And in fact, some people have talked about doing that kind of thing off-chain. So that doesn't necessarily require a hard fork even. You can then move to a model where the only thing the community votes for is features that are paid for by someone else. But I think we could get there very, very quickly within the next release or two. So maybe a month.
I wholeheartedly endorse the idea of having a roadmap to a stable feature set. I think that would be a good way to focus our efforts. But I think we're going to need some more help even beyond that. That's a very good stepping stone and very important initiative. But Cube 2 just asked a question, which I also have a big puzzling over, which is how is it that Lisk has been so good at being able to market their platform, which is based on our old technology, that we seem to be so so difficult to achieve anything close to that ourselves, even though our foundation is much
I don't
better.
think that that's actually fair, because if you think about Bitshares crowdfunder and how much it accomplished, it was pretty successful, I'd say.
Is Lisk in the top 10 of CoinMarketCap?
Well, yeah, I mean, they haven't actually done anything yet either. They've just raised money based on an idea, and I think it was Lion Danny or someone posted a post just today. It's one of the top posts on BitShares Talk with an article about crowd funds and the psychology behind them and things of that nature. And that's something to consider too. I mean,
Yeah,
just because someone is able to raise a bunch of money doesn't really mean anything except that they were able to sell everybody on an idea. So.
Well, and that's 100% true, right?
But my point
There are
is
a lot of
that
people who walk away with that money.
Their idea that they're selling successfully is based on stuff we've already worked through, and I mean a lot of it, not completely, but I mean to be fair, it's the core of what they started with is what we've already worked through, and we've done so much more than that, and yet we can't seem to get the traction anywhere close to the traction that they've achieved. But I think it's being said in the comments over here that as to why that is.
Tom?
Well,
like
I think
Bytemaster said, we're in the top 10 on CoinMarketCap.
Well, when I look,
I don't recall very many times when we haven't been.
That's true. That's a good point.
And I mean, let's face it, this is a pretty hardcore little competition, even in the coins that exist today.
It's really hard to measure traction. I'd say, do they have a community where 80 to 100 people show up every Friday to have a live real-time interaction? Because that is a level of traction this Mumble session represents. That is shows a lot of consistent commitment. It's not just people that get around to it when they have time. It's people consciously choosing to show up at a particular time and place every single week. Find another community that's got that and tell me that, who has, this appearance of traction and then there's actual traction. How much money did they raise?
That's an excellent point.
I think like 15,000 Bitcoin, I think.
One figure I saw was 4,800 Bitcoin, but you see all types of things, so I'm really not sure what the actual figure is. I do know it's at least 1,200, but somewhere between 1,200 and 4,800 BTC is what I've heard they've raised.
I want to really quick get to something, speaking of Lisk Crypto, because Lisk Crypto fan did have a question actually regarding the stable feature set that Bytemaster was talking about. And I'm not going to quote it right now because I don't have it right in front of me, because every time somebody types something, it drops me back down. But he essentially asked here, how long do you think a general time frame it would take to get that stable set of features in? And of course, let's face it, timing on this is one of those things that we hate to do, but it's a question that I feel that it's a pertinent question to ask and hear what you think. And then I take that and I say, yeah, and there's probably thousands of things that could change it.
Oh, I've been working with the guys to identify a roadmap for a stable release. The block trades team is working with Ben to make sure that that's all the pending pull requests and all that work that's already been done can get merged in and then stabilized. SVK will continue to work on bug fixes. I've sort of put a feature freeze on UI enhancements because I'm tired of things going backwards, adding new features, breaking things. So fixing bugs in existing behavior is about the only thing that I want the guys working on right now with the because I think it's better to get to a stable set of features and let that sit for a while. If there's going to be new features that should not be done on the main branch, it should be done in experimental branches that people go out of their way to find. So it seems like there's a lot of Lisk people here on this Mumble session today. So Lisk crypto fan, so on. So it's really exciting to see the DPoS concept gaining traction.
Bingo.
So I am very supportive of that. You will not find me dissing other crypto projects anymore.
Well, the interesting thing is, and this is what I've always personally thought was, Bitshares in general has won. If I can go to CoinMarketCap and see 70% of the top coins are based on a DPoS type of algorithm or protocol rather. Because then, you think about all the altcoins, a lot of Bitcoin people tend to hate it, but altcoins really have done a very good job of promoting Bitcoin too, right?
You mean in the form of Doge? In getting new people on board, or are you talking about something else?
Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you guys for... Go ahead.
Hosted web wallet is working, and the Stealth wallet uses it. So if you're using the Stealth test UI, you can start to experience the hosted one. Obviously, there's lots of UI quirks. It's more of an engineering interface than a simple one for end users, but all the mechanics are there. It could be made easier to use.
Yes. Is anybody talking?
Well, I was
Okay, I just thought somebody set out.
Yeah, I was. So to me, one of the I was talking about why it's so hard to sell people on Bitshares, is that it might be because it's very hard for a community as a whole to identify the target audience. So, for example, when you say that's a bank for everybody, if you look at the whole trading interface, day traders are not the crypto day traders is not a very big target audience.
Hey, Joey, I would love to continue with this, but we're kind of on time constraints for the day.
Yeah.
We have a lot to get in. So I have to unfortunately end this hangout, but I did want to let everybody know, and yes, Johnny Bitcoin, I was going to let everybody know at the end of this hangout. For any